The wind whipped my hair across my face as I stood on the rut of the spire, Manhattan stretching out before me like a glittering promise. The city sprawled beneath me, all lights and steel, like something I could almost touch, almost claim. But tonight I wasn't just here to look at it, I was here to conquer it. The clock on my phone read 400 p.m. 4 hours. That's all I had left until H hour, until everything would finally be recognized. I'd spent the last 3 years planning this moment, every detail carefully crafted, every decision calculated. Tonight, Arthur Sterling, the man who built the law firm where I worked, would announce my partnership in front of Manhattan's legal elite. The seat at the head of the table was mine for the taking, and nothing was going to ruin this moment. I stepped behind a heavy glass windbreak that shielded the VIP section, the glass glinting in the late afternoon sun. My fingers brushed the delicate petals of the peonies of the family head table. White and blush pink, each stem costing more than most people spent on an entire bouquet. Imported from Holland, hand-picked to perfection. I'd paid for all of this, every single detail. My hand moved to my purse, feeling the reassuring weight of the 2 thick envelopes inside. My grand plan. The culmination of 3 years of careful saving, meticulous timing, and sacrifices I'd made without a second thought. In one envelope, a retirement savings book for my parents. Enough to fund the European river cruise Mom had circled in travel magazines for years. Enough for Dad to buy the vintage Corvette he browsed online every Sunday morning. I'd always promised I would give them everything they dreamed of. The other envelope, well, that one was for my sister Brittany. A full ride sail voucher for the Institut at France, Aix de la Mode in Paris. The same school she'd obsessed over since she was 16. The one I knew would make her a fashion icon. Not just any program, but the best. She didn't know it yet, but I was giving her the world. I smiled to myself as I adjusted the flowers, thinking about how proud my family would be when they saw all of this. Tonight, when Arthur Sterling made his announcement, I wanted them to be there. I wanted them to see me standing tall, finally earning their respect. Finally, they'd be proud of the daughter they'd always overlooked. Surely, if I gave them their dream lives, they would finally love me the way I'd always needed to be loved. My phone buzzed once, then immediately again. I pulled it out, expecting a message about traffic or parking. But instead, my stomach dropped as I saw the first notification. Bank alert. American Express supplementary card ending in 4 dials sent return daughter at Pink Flamingo Beach Club. Transaction approved. Before I could process it, the second notification arrived. We can't make it. Your sister is having a panic attack. She needs quiet meditation space to heal immediately. So sorry, sweetie. You understand. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over again. Pink Flamingo Beach Club. I knew that place. A tacky, neon-lit disaster on the outskirts of Long Island, where college kids went to drink watered down cocktails from plastic cups while house music pounded so loud you couldn't hear yourself think. The kind of place that smelled like coconut sunscreen and regret, that was a quiet meditation space. The contradiction hit me like a physical slap. I felt a cold knot tighten in my chest. My mind, trained by years of legal analysis, immediately started cataloging the evidence. Brittany needs quiet. Brittany needs to heal. Brittany is having a panic attack. But the charge went through at 3:47 p.m., 13 minutes ago. That meant they'd been there for hours. Probably since noon. Which meant they knew they weren't coming. They'd waited until the charge went through. Waited until the money was gone, so I couldn't cancel it. They hadn't told me until it was too late. I felt the anger rising, but it wasn't about the $3 and I'd spent more than that on Brittany's rent last month alone. No, this was different. It was the contempt. The casual, dismissive contempt. They had chosen to spend my money partying at a dump, instead of 3 hours celebrating the biggest achievement of my life. They had used my money to run away from me. The world suddenly felt like it was spinning just a little bit off its axis. And that was when the tears started to burn at the back of my eyes. But I wasn't going to cry. Not here, not at this party, not where anyone could see. Miss Ross. Philip, the restaurant manager, stood a respectful distance away, his face neutral, but his eyes filled with an unmistakable pity. He'd been accommodating throughout the planning process, but I could tell this wasn't lost on him. He'd been watching me rearrange and fuss over the table for the last hour. Should we clear the family table? He asked gently. I looked at the empty seats, perfectly arranged at the prime spot directly adjacent to where Arthur Sterling would stand for the toasts. If the managing partner saw me sitting alone, what would he think? A successful professional, but isolated. Brilliant, but personally deficient. A woman who had sacrificed family for career, who had no foundation, no roots, no real life beyond the office. The tears burned harder, but I blinked them back. Hard. No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Keep the setup exactly as it is. The most luxurious arrangement you have. Philip nodded, but I saw understanding flicker across his face. But take away the reserved for family sign, I added, my voice sharper now. I didn't want that label. Not anymore, of course, Miss Ross, he said, already moving away. I looked down at my phone again. The bank alert was still there, stark and undeniable. I opened the banking app with trembling fingers and pulled up the transaction details. Pink Flamingo Beach Club, VIP Cabana package, DOS of 200. High Tide Alcohol Tower X 1000, Private J Serviteur, 10 alcohol towers, a private DJ. This wasn't about stress relief. This wasn't about healing. A celebration. And they weren't celebrating me. They were celebrating not having to be here. I felt something hard shift inside me, cold and unyielding. It settled into place where the hurt had been. I slipped my phone back into my purse, beside the 2 envelopes that now felt incredibly heavy. The Empire State Building stretched before me, golden in the late afternoon light. In 4 hours, this rooftop would be filled with the moful people in New York's legal community. And I would be standing here alone. Or I would be standing here with people who actually chose to be here. I stared at the phone screen for what felt like hours, but it was only a few seconds. The messages were still there, frozen in time, mocking me. The first one about the bank charge, then the second from Mom, we can't make it. Your sister is having a panic attack. She needs quiet meditation space to heal immediately. So sorry, sweetie, you understand. I read it again. Each time it hit harder. I knew that place. I had been there before briefly, years ago when I was still dumb enough to think it might be fun. The Pink Flamingo Beach Club, loud, obnoxious, full of people who were too busy trying to seem happy to actually be happy. The kind of place where you could lose yourself for a while, forget who you were. That was where my sister was. That was where she was healing. I ran my fingers over the peonies again, but the action felt robotic now, empty. It wasn't just the money, though that stung enough. I had been the one paying for everything. Rent. Medical card bills. I'd sent money every month without complaint. Every transfer a reminder of my place in this family, the provider, the giver. But this was something else. What hurt the most was the timing. The charge had gone through only minutes ago. I checked again, 3:47 p.m. The text came right after, so they had known. They knew they weren't coming to my celebration, my moment. And they waited until they'd used my money before sending the excuse. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. But I could feel the tears stinging at the back of my eyes again, threatening to spill over. I blinked them away. Not here, not in front of anyone. Not when I had spent every waking hour planning this evening, shaping it into the moment that would finally make my family proud of me. I glanced up, the city sprawling beneath me. There was no comfort in the view anymore. The skyline was just a blur of glass and steel, the lights dimming as dusk fell. The world was shifting, and I was still standing on the edge, holding on to something that was slipping away. I felt a tap on my shoulder, and I turned to see Philip, the manager. He stood just a few feet away, his hands clasped into and face neutral. Miss Ross, he said, his voice a careful whisper. Should we clear the family table? The words hit me like a punch. Family table. That empty space where my parents should have been, my sister. The ones who should have been by my side. They weren't just absent, they were rejecting me. The table was perfect. Everything about tonight was perfect. But I wasn't per to them. Not even close. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. No, keep the setup as it is. The most luxurious arrangement you have. He nodded slowly, but there was something else in his eyes, pity. I hated it. I hated the way everyone seemed to be treating me like I'd wanted sympathy. I didn't want respect. I wanted to be seen, truly seen. But there was no time for self-pity. Not tonight. Not when everything was on the line. This was my moment, and I was going to make it count. Even if my family couldn't be here to witness it. Take away reserved for family sign, I added. It was important. I didn't want the label. Not anymore. Philip blinked, clearly taken aback by the request, but nodded. Of course, Miss Ross. As he turned to walk away, I glanced at the empty seats once more. It should have been a night to remember. But instead, It felt like the beginning of something much darker. I pulled my phone from my pocket again, the weight of the two envelopes pressing against my side. One was for my parents' retirement savings, a dream they'd been talking about for years. The other was for Brittany, her scholarship to the best Gaussian school in the world, a ticket to her dream life. But the gifts felt heavy now. Not just physically, but emotionally. I had sacrificed so much for them. And yet, here I was standing alone, still trying to prove that I was worth something to them. That I could finally be the daughter they would be proud of. I opened the banking app again, my fingers shaking as I tapped on the details of the charge. I needed to see it one more time. 3,000. For what? A VIP cabana at a beach club, alcohol towers to all of it. My money. For what? To celebrate not being here. To celebrate not acknowledging my achievements. I felt something cold inside me, something that I was there. It wasn't just hurt anymore. It was contempt. The kind of contempt that rises when you realize someone love has used you, taken everything you've given, and turned it into a joke. I looked at the phone again. I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. This was me reclaiming the life I had worked so hard to build, without the shadow of my family's demands hanging over me. I wasn't going to let them ruin this. I slipped the phone back into my purse. I had 4 hours. 4 hours until my life changed. And they weren't going to be a prayer of it. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. I was done. I wasn't the victim here anymore. And by the end of the night, they would know it. The gala was in full swing by the time way over to the head table, now completely rearranged. The lights overhead glimmered like stars, their soft glow reflecting off crystal glasses, and the hum of conversation blended with the smooth jazz playing in the background. I looked around the room. This was it. This was the moment I had worked for, the culmination of years of sacrifice. The partners, the clients, the legal elite. All of them gathered to celebrate success, and for the first time, I would be standing at the center of it. But as I stood there, I couldn't shake the empty feeling gnawing at my insides. The family table, the one that should have been filled with Mom, Dad, and Brittany, sat silent and barren. The empty seats felt like an accusation, like the absence of my family was louder than any applause I would receive tonight. I had been prepared for this moment. But nothing could have prepared me for the weight of their absence. I had given them everything. Every dollar, every hour spent away from the office. Every ounce of my energy had been poured into making them proud. And now this. I glanced over to the VIP section, where my team was sitting, at the head table in the prime spot. It had been a calculated decision to invite them, but seeing them there, Jenkins, Davis Vance, and Samantha, felt like the only thing that wasn't a lie in the room. They were the ones who had earned their seats. They were ones who had helped me, had shown up when it mattered, had put in the hours to help me succeed. They weren't family, but they were the family I had chosen. I walked over to the bar, my heels clicking against the marble floor, the faint clink of glasses in the background. A part of me felt out of place, as if the weight of tonight's success wasn't mine to carry alone. But then I saw Samantha, standing near the edge of the room, her eyes scanning the crowd. She was sharp, composed, and she looked at me as though she knew exactly what I was thinking. She caught my gaze and gave a small nod, a silent gesture of support. I returned the nod, taking a deep breath. Tonight was Nibum, this was my moment. I looked around again, trying to shake the unsettling feeling of abandonment that clung to me. Then my phone buzzed, a message from my mother. "I can't believe you did this. How could you air our dirty laundry like that?" At the words hit like a slap. I hadn't even realized I'd been checking my phone so obsessively, waiting for some sign that they'd finally acknowledge me. But this was her response. The woman who had raised me, who had told me for years that success was about family, was now angry because I had done the thing they'd always wanted me to succeed. I tried to push the thought away, focusing instead on the people in front of me, my associates who were all conversing with one another. They were already making connections, just as I had instructed them. They were becoming part of this world, this new version of success that I had built. I had made it, and for the first time, I felt a sense of pride that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. But then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from my father. I stared at the screen for a moment. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to continue pretending that everything was fine, that I was unaffected by their absence. But I couldn't. I answered the call. "Hello, I said, my voice steady though I felt the weight thing pressing on me. Eva, his voice was soft, almost apologetic. We've seen the video. My heart skipped a beat. The video, the one my sister had posted, showing her in the middle of her beach club party, mocking me, using my credit card like it was a joke. I'm sorry, Eva. Your mother, no. I cut him off. Don't make excuses. You've already chosen where you stand. I've been helping you for 3 years, paying for everything, doing everything I could to make you proud. And this is how you repay me. There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear the hesitation in his breath. You have no idea what it's like, Eva, he said finally, his voice tinged with frustration. We've worked hard for everything we have, but sometimes things just fall apart. I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp in the air. No, Dad. Things fell apart the moment you chose to skip my celebration. The moment you decided to spend my money on something as stupid as that beach club. And now you're calling me, trying to make me feel guilty for finally standing up for myself. The line went silent again. I could almost hear the weight of my words settling in on him. He didn't have an answer for that. He never did. I've done enough, I said quietly. I've done enough for all of you. I'm done. Before he could respond, I hung up. I looked at my phone screen for a long moment, the silence pressing down on me. And then, with deliberate calm, I slid the phone back into my purse. Tonight wasn't about them. Tonight was about me. I took a deep breath and stepped back into the room. The music was louder now, the voices more intense, as the party moved into full swing. But for the first time, I wasn't just a bystander. I was the one in charge. The one they had all underestimated, and tonight I was going to prove them all wrong. The room was buzzing now, filled with chatter and clinking glasses. The gala had shifted into full swing, and Arthur Sterling had finally arrived, his silver hair gleaming under the spotlights. He was the man of the hour. The man who had built the firm I had worked my entire career to be part of. It should have been a moment of triumph, but instead, it felt like a hollow echo in the back of my mind. I stood near the edge of the room, my hands gripping the sides of my glass, as I watched the guests mingle, laughing, discussing mergers, legal victories, the usual cocktail party fare. My associates were at the head table now, making their own connections, their own marks in this world I had fought so hard to enter. I'd replaced my family with them. And though it was exactly what I'd planned, something in the pit of my stomach twisted uncomfortably. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. This wasn't how I'd imagined it. I had built everything to make them proud, to show them that I could be what they'd always wanted me to be. But they weren't here, and now, all I could feel was the absence of my family, and worse, the anger that I had wasted so much time, so much energy, trying to gain their approval, only to be met with disdain. And then he walked in, Arthur Sterling, the reason we were all here, the man who held my future in his hands. He was shorter than I expected, but his presence filled the room. He had a way of commanding attention, a way of making everyone around him believe they were the most important person in the room. I forced a smile, straightened my shoulders, and walked toward him as he approached the head table. The words I had been rehearsing in my head all night seemed to falter as he turned to me, his sharp blue eyes sizing me up. "Miss Ross," he said, extending his hand. "I must say, I've been looking forward to this evening. It's that every day we celebrate a new partner, especially one so young." I shook his hand, keeping my grip firm, but my mind was racing. This was it. The moment I had worked for. The moment everything was supposed to change. Yet all I could think about was the empty seats at the family table and the messages that were still coming in from my parents, my sister, trying to justify the betrayal. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice steady. "It's truly an honor." He gave a small nod, then glanced over my shoulder at the table where my family should have been. I could see the curiosity in his eyes. He was expecting to see them there. He had heard about my family, the sacrifices I'd made to get where I was, how much they meant to me. But they weren't here, and I could feel the weight of that question hanging between us. "You've mentioned your family in your interviews," he said, his tone casual but probing. "I must admit, I was hoping to finally meet them tonight. I've heard so much about your parents, especially. Where are they?" I froze for a moment. I didn't know how to respond. The truth would be humiliating. The lie would be transparent. I had spent the last 3 years crafting an image of a perfect family, the one I had dreamed of for so long. But now, standing in front of Arthur Sterling, that perfect image was shattered. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "They?" They couldn't make it tonight, I said, my voice tight. A family emergency came up. They had to leave town unexpectedly. Arthur's brow furrowed, and I could see the doubt flicker in his eyes. He wasn't buying it. Not entirely. He had seen this kind of thing before, the excuses, the stories that didn't quite add up, and he wasn't the type to let things slide. Well, he said after a pause, his gaze steady, that's unfortunate. Family is an important part of success, after all. I nodded, fighting the tightness in my chest. Yes, it is said, my voice barely above a whisper. And then, just as I thought I might crack under the pressure, something unexpected happened. Nana Beatrice appeared beside me like a force of nature. She had always been a rock in my life, strong, unyielding, and sharp as a tack. And though she was in her late 70s, she carried herself with a regal grace that made everyone else seem small in comparison. Arthur turned toward her, surprise flickering across his face. "Miss Beatrice," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Beatrice Ross," she said smoothly, taking his hand with a firm shake. "Eva's grandmother, former principal at St. Catherine's Preparatory, and the person who taught this young woman everything she knows about discipline, excellence, and integrity." The words hit like a punch, and I could see Arthur's expression shift. He didn't expect this, but Nana wasn't done. She stepped slightly forward, positioning herself between Arthur and me, almost like a barrier. "I understand that you're looking for the source of Eva's success," she continued, her voice smooth, almost too calm. "And I'll tell you right now, if you understand why she's made it this far, you need to look no further than me. Her parents may have given her life, but I am the one who taught her that excellence is not negotiable. That commitment means showing up, even when it's inconvenient. And that success is built on consistency, not convenient." Clearly taken aback. The man who had seen and heard it all had no words for her. And in that moment, I saw something shift in him. Respect. It wasn't something I earned on my own. It was something Nana had commanded with her presence. "I see," Arthur said, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Well, Miss Beatrice, you certainly have a way with words. And clearly, Eva has learned from the very best." He turned back to me, his tone softer now. "You're lucky of her," he said, clapping me on the shoulder in a rare display of camaraderie. I managed a tight smile. "I know." He moved off to greet other guests, and I stood there for a moment, my knees threatening to buckle beneath me. My grandmother had done what I couldn't. She had defended me. She had filled in the gaps where my parents had failed me. I looked over at her, but she didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her presence spoke louder than any words could. "Easy," she said quietly, gripping my elbow as I began to sway slightly. "You're fine." That was a perfectly executed defensive maneuver, and he bought every word of it. I nodded, trying to steady myself. The storm of emotions inside me had settled, but the anger still simmered beneath the surface. I had done everything I could to make them proud, and they were gone, all of them. But at least one person had my back, and that was all I needed. The evening stretched on, but it felt like time had stopped. I wandered through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries, but I was barely present. My mind kept returning to that empty table, the family table. I couldn't shake the image of it, sitting there untouched, as if it had been left to mock me. The conversation around me was a blur. I nodded politely to the partners and associates making small talk and smiling when I was supposed to. But all I could think about was my family. How they had betrayed me, how they had chosen to run away instead of standing by me for the most important moment of my life. I tried not to look at my phone, but it buzzed in my pocket, another text from Mom. "We need to talk, Eva. This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing us." I closed my eyes for a moment, willing myself not to react, not here, not now. But the anger surged again, hot and furious, crawling up my throat. Then, another notification. It was a message from Brittany. I almost didn't want to open it, but I couldn't stop myself. Why did you have to post that video? You're making me look bad. Everyone's texting me, and it's embarrassing. Take it down, please." I stared at the message. Take it down. Take what down? The truth. The evidence of her betrayal. Her reckless party, paid for with my money. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even ashamed. She just didn't want the consequences to catch up with her. I felt a rush of cold satisfaction. The video was out there and wasn't going anywhere. The truth had been exposed. And now, they were trying to shift the blame. They were trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty for standing up for myself. I shoved my phone back into my purse. I couldn't deal with this right now. Not here, not with everyone watching. But there was one thing I had to do. I excused myself from the group I was talking to and walked to the side of the room, away from the crowd. My fingers shook as I pulled my phone out again. I scrolled through the apps, found the banking one, and opened it. The transaction was still there, staring at me in cold black and white, a 3,000 pink flamingo beach club. I clicked on the transaction details again, watching the breakdown of what my money had gone to: Vitka Kolkage, 10 alcohol towers, a private DJ. The same shit they had spent the night doing. Celebrating their abandonment of me. Celebrating not being here. Celebrating using me. I opened the Instagram app next, knowing what I would find. I had already seen the live stream, already watched the story 3 times. My sister holding a neon cocktail in each hand, surrounded by her friends, all of them laughing and dancing, oblivious to the damage they were causing. And there was thanks for the credit card, sis. You're the best am ever. I felt the sting again, the cold, biting fury. It wasn't just about the money. It was the casual, dismissive way they had used me. How they had acted as if I was nothing more than a tool to their indulgence. And then something snapped. The anger turned into something colder, sharper. It was a feeling I had never known before, but it was unmistakable. Contempt, pure, undiluted contempt. I had been their I had been their backup plan, the one they could rely on to fix their messes, to solve their problems. But no more. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't let this ruin the night. I had worked too hard. But it was time for a change. I left the side of the room, my footsteps steady as I walked back toward the head table, where my team was still seated. They had all earned their place tonight. They had worked for it. They had shown up when it mattered. And they were here because they respected me. I walked up to the table, the weight of what I was about to do settling heavily on my chest. I could feel the eyes of the room on me. The curious glances, the whispers that were just loud enough for me to hear. But I wasn't going to let them dictate my actions anymore. I tapped on the glass to get the attention of the catering staff. They all turned, waiting for me to speak. Change of plans, I said, my voice clear and confident. This table is no longer reserved for family. There was a beat of silence. Then, I heard Philippe's voice, soft but filled with hesitation. Miss Ross, are you sure? I nodded firmly. Yes. This table is now for my associates. Get them seated here. I want the place settings to be as impressive as possible. Make it look intentional, not like a backup plan. Philippe's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't hesitate. Understood, Miss Ross. As he hurried away to take care of the changes, I glanced around the room. The noise was rising, people moving and mingling, the chatter growing louder. But I couldn't bring myself to care about any of that. My family had failed me, but I had something they could never take away: control. For the first time that evening, I felt a glimmer of something real, a sense of pride that wasn't to anyone else's opinion. My associates were seated at the head table now, where my family should have been. They were the ones who had supported me. They were the ones who had earned this. I wasn't just the daughter of someone's success story anymore. I was the author of my own. As I turned back to the room, I couldn't stop the smile that at my lips. It wasn't just about proving them wrong anymore. It was about showing everyone, including myself, that I was more than they ever saw in me. Tonight, I would finally take my place. And nothing was going to stop me. The night seemed to take on a life of its own after the changes to the seating. I walked through the crowd, moving with purpose, but my thoughts were miles away. My phone buzzed again, a constant reminder of the family I had cut off, the ones who'd chosen to stay away, the ones I had tried to give everything to. But now, none of that mattered. I had a new family, one that actually cared about me, my team, the people who worked beside me, the ones who showed up when it counted. The gala continued, but there was a weight that settled on my chest as the evening wore on. It wasn't just about the empty seats anymore. It was about something much deeper, something I wasn't sure I was ready to face yet. The weight years spent being invisible to my family, of giving and give without ever receiving what I needed from them. And then, the moment arrived. Arthur Sterling, the man I'd hoped would be my salvation, stood near the bar, sipping his drink and chatting with a few partners. He looked like the embodiment of everything I'd ever wanted to be: successful, influential, untouchable. The kind of man who never had to prove himself, who didn't need anyone's approval. But tonight he would know my name. Tonight I would be the one who earned his respect. Not because of my family, but because of who I was. I approached him, my heels clicking against the polished floor. The chatter around us faded as I stepped into his line of sight. He turned and smiled warmly, though there was a glint of curiosity in his eyes. He hadn't forgotten my earlier response about my family. He hadn't forgotten their absence. But tonight, he would learn more than just my professional achievements. He said, his voice smooth like it always was. I must say you've certainly made a statement tonight. I didn't expect to see the head table so empty. I forced a smile, the words coming easily now. Yes, well, family is important, but so is earning your place. I've spent years earning mine. And tonight, I'm surrounded by the people who actually appreciate me for what I've done, not just for what I can provide. He studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. Then a small chuckle escaped him. A fair point. It's rare to see someone as young as you so certain of where they stand. It's a quality I admire. I let the compliment sink in. I wasn't girl trying to prove myself to him anymore. I wasn't the woman looking for validation from anyone. I had earned this, all of it, on my own terms. But then my phone buzzed again, the familiar sound almost too much to bear. I pulled it from my purse, but this time, I wasn't going to look away. Not this time. The notification from Mom was waiting for me. You mistake. You've embarrassed us. This is not the way we raised you. I glanced at Arthur, who seemed to notice the shift in my expression. He raised an eyebrow, but I shook my head quickly, masking the moment. You've certainly caused quite a stir, he said, his tone lighter now. Teasing almost. I've seen the video, the one your sister posted. He paused, letting the words land. It's an interesting juxtaposition, don't you think? Your speech night so composed, and then that. I stood there, the weight of the words hitting harder I expected. He was right. The video, which had gone viral in a matter of hours, was a stark contrast to the polished, controlled image I had worked so hard to build. There I was standing tall, celebrating my success, while my sister, holding my credit card, screamed in the camera at the pink flamingo, mocking me, but I wasn't ashamed, not anymore. I met Heather's gaze, steady and unflinching. It is, I said, my voice low but clear. It's the truth, and it's not the first time my family's actions have tried to tear me down. But it will be the last. Arthur nodded slowly, a faint respect in his eyes now. I think you're right, he said, his voice almost thoughtful. It takes strength to stand up to your family, and it takes even more strength to stand alone. Not many people can do it. I smiled, the weight of the past few hours settling inside me. It wasn't just about my family anymore. It wasn't just about the shame they had tried to pile onto my success. This was about something much bigger. This was about reclaiming myself, about finding peace with the woman I had become, not the woman they wanted me to be. I felt a shift in the air, a quiet crackle of energy as my team, my real family, began to make their way toward the head table. I watched them, their faces open, filled with pride and respect, and I felt a sense of calm settle over me. Tonight was not about my family's betrayal. It wasn't about their abandonment. It wasn't about the 3 texts or the empty seats at the table. Tonight was about everything I had fought for. Tonight was about the people who had supported me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Arthur followed my gaze, his eyes flicking back to me. You've earned this, Eva, he said, his voice softer now, more genuine. You've earned it all. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe before. I had earned every bit of this. Every decision, every sacrifice, every sleepless night. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The music swelled around us, and I looked around the room, a surge of confidence flooding through me. The night was mine, and no one was going to take it from me. I turned back to Arthur, smiling. Thank you, I said simply, feeling a sense of quiet victory wash over me. He nodded, clapping me on the shoulder with an approving smile before he turned back to the crowd. As I stood there, I felt the heavy weight of the past years finally begin to lift. The room spun around me in a blur of noise and laughter, but in the center of it all, I was finally free. And nothing, not even my family's betrayal, could change that. The night stretched on, but everything felt quieter now, as though it had been transported into a space where nothing existed beyond the quiet hum of my own thoughts. The drinks kept flowing, the music still played, but it was all background noise to the shifting reality inside me. I stood by the head table, my eyes scanning the room. My team was scattered across the space, mingling, laughing, building the connections that would propel their careers forward. Just like I had done years ago. But tonight, they weren't just my colleagues. They were my chosen family. I was still processing everything, my family's absence, the video that had gone viral, the way everything had unfolded so quickly. The anger still simmered underneath, but now there was something else. Something colder, sharper. And then it happened. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost didn't want to look. The last thing I wanted was another message from my mother or Brittany. But curiosity got the best of me. I pulled my phone out, the screen lighting up with an Instagram notification. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the name Laura Lux, the influencer from earlier in the night. I opened it, and my breath caught in my throat. The video was there. Front was there, a beautifully edited montage of my speech, juxtaposed against my sister's chaotic party at the Pink Flamingo. The caption hit hard: Class V's trash. Family abandons sister's career celebration to party on her credit card. My stomach dropped. I had already seen the live stream, already watched my sister mock me on her story, already watched her bask in the glow of my money. But this was different. This was the truth laid bare for the world to see. The video had over 2 million views. 2 million people had seen my sister's disrespect, had seen her use my credit card without a second thought. I stared at the comments, thousands of them, streaming by the minute. Most were sympathetic to me, calling my family out for their callousness. A few were more brutal. One said, "Imagine abandoning your own daughter for a beach club. What kind of people do that?" Another read, "As she's the best am ever. She's a lawyer, not a bank. Family is trash for doing this." I felt a small rush of satisfaction. This was what I needed. This was my moment of vindication, the public affirmation that had been right all along. They couldn't run from the truth anymore. It was out there for everyone to see, and no matter how hard they tried to erase it, no matter how many calls they made, it would never go away. But then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from my mother. I didn't answer. She called immediately. I declined it again. My fingers hovered over the screen. I could already feel the anxiety creeping up inside me. The guilt, the voice in my head telling me to pick up. But no, not this time. Instead, I opened the message thread from my dad. His text was short: You need to call us. Your mom is flipping out." I almost laughed. They had spent years treating me like a resource, a way to fix their problems, and now they were angry that I wasn't playing their game anymore. But I didn't owe them an explanation. Not anymore. I set the phone down, turning away from the crowd and walking toward the bar. I needed a moment to breathe, to steady myself before I let the emotions take over. I grabbed a glass of wine from the bar, the coolness of the glass grounding me, reminding me of how far I'd come. I'd built this career on my own. I'd sacrificed everything for it, and I wasn't going to let them ruin it. Not now. As I sipped the wine, I noticed someone watching me. It was one of the associates, Jenkins. He had that curious, respectful look on his face, as if he'd noticed something that shifted in me tonight. I held his gaze for a moment before I turned my attention back to the room, the crowd around me, the empty seats at the family table. The anger was still there, but now it felt like fuel, something I could use to drive me forward. They had made their choice, and now I was making mine. The music shifted to a new song, something upbeat and fast, but I wasn't paying attention. My mind was on what came next. I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Samantha, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and Shiva. She said, her voice low, "It's time." I nodded. The speech I had almost forgotten. The moment when everything I had worked for would be in front of everyone. But I wasn't nervous. I wasn't afraid. I was ready. I followed Samantha to the podium, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The crowd parted to let me through. The room fell silent as I stepped up to the microphone. I could feel their eyes on me, the weight of their attention pressing down, but it didn't faze me. Not anymore. I cleared my throat. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady and strong. "Tonight is a celebration of success, of hard work, and of loyalty." I paused, letting my words sink in. The silence was thick now. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. And I want to take a moment to address something that has been on my mind. Because the truth is, not all success is celebrated equally. I let my gaze sweep over the room. Everyone was listening now. I could see the partners leaning in, the guests watching closely. I've spent years building my career, making sacrifices, doing everything I could to make my family proud. And for a long time, I believed that's what mattered the most. But I was wrong. I took a deep breath, letting the words flow. Success is about more than just what you can give to others. It's about what you can create for yourself. And sometimes that means standing alone. I let the words land, feeling the weight of them settle into the room. I have learned that the people who truly deserve to be my table aren't the ones who take. They're the ones who show up. And with that, I paused, letting the silence stretch out before I added, this table isn't reserved for family. It's reserved for those of the same vision. Those who stand with me, not because they have to, but believe in what I'm building. The room was still for a long moment, and then it happened. Samantha started clapping. Jenkins followed, then Davis, Vance, and soon everyone in the room was applauding, some even cheering. I smiled, and for the first time tonight, I felt something real peace. The days that followed were strange, almost like a dream that kept shifting in and out of focus. I woke up to silence. Not the kind of silence that felt like an empty space in my life, but the kind that felt freeing, like I had finally rid myself of something that had weighed me down for years. My phone rang incessantly the next morning, calls from my dad, from Brittany. They all wanted to talk. They all wanted to apologize, explain, make things right. But I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Not when they had spent so long pretending I didn't matter. Now they wanted to fix things because the world was watching. I deleted the messages without reading them. I didn't need their apologies. What I needed was peace. And for the first time in a long time, I had it. I spent the next few days focusing on work, something that had always kept me grounded. I closed the Morrison deal that had been hanging over my head for weeks. I reviewed the blue folder Samantha had prepared, meticulously going through each transaction, each wire transfer. The more I read through it, the clearer it became. I had been right to sever those ties. It wasn't just the money. It was the manipulation, the way they had used me, not just for financial support, but for emotional validation. I had given them everything, and had taken it without ever really seeing me. The following Friday, I got a notification from Nana Beatrice. It was a link to a local suburban newsletter. The headline made my stomach drop. Local family seeks community support after daughter's cruel abandonment. I clicked the link without thinking, and my eyes scanned the article quickly, my pulse picking up. There they were, my parents, standing outside their house, claiming they had been abandoned by me, that I had cut them off over a trivial misunderstanding, a scheduling conflict. And there, in a quote from Brittany, she was whining about how I had exposed our family, about how hurt she was by my actions. My hands shook as I read through it. But it wasn't the words that got to me. It was the GoFund link at the bottom of the article. They were trying to raise the $50,000 to replace the gift that shredded, the retirement savings for my parents, the scholarship for Brittany. I wasn't surprised, but it still hit like a punch to the gut. I scrolled down through the comments. Some were from people I didn't know, but others were who had seen the video, who knew the truth. Wait, the scheduling conflict was them skipping her promotion to a beach club. I saw the TikTok. Team Eva all the way. Imagine fumbling the bag this hard and then asking strangers for cash. The audacity. I read more comments, feeling a strange sense of vindication. She's the best am ever. She's a lawyer, not a bank. Family is trash for doing this. The grandmother in the gray suit is more of a family than those people ever were. I closed my laptop, my chest tightening, but this time, it wasn't anger that bubbled up. It was something else. Something colder. Something I had learned to let go of. Pure, crystalline contempt. I wasn't going to fix their mess anymore. I wasn't going to be their scapegoat. They could try to spin the narrative, try to play the victim, but the truth was already out there. And the more they tried to lie, the more it exposed them for what they really were. Saturday night came, and I had planned a quiet dinner with Nana Beatrice at our little Italian restaurant near the office. It was one of those places that didn't need to be fancy, just warm, cozy, and with food that felt like it was made by someone really cared. Nana was already there when I arrived, a bottle of red wine already opened and poured. She looked up at me, her eyes scanning my face, not for signs of stress, but for something else. She knew me too well. You look different, she said, raising an eyebrow as I sat down. I smiled, the warmth in my chest making me feel lighter than I had a long time. I feel different, I replied, taking the glass she offered, lighter. Ah, she said with a small, satisfied nod. That's the weight of dead expectations falling off your shoulder. I nodded, swirling the wine in my glass. The cool, rich scent filled the air, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself truly enjoy it. You were right, I said softly. It's finally over. She chuckled softly, her eyes twinkling. It's not just over, Eva. It's a new beginning. You've stopped trying to buy love. Now you're building a legacy. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a sense of peace settle into my bones. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I wasn't hiding the things I couldn't control. I was moving forward, and this time it was for me. We sat there for a long while, the conversation flowing easily between us. Nana talked about her old days as a principal, about the kids she had mentored, about the battles she had fought in her own life. And I listened, letting her words wash over me, a comfort I had always known. By the time dessert came, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let my family back in. Not like this. They had made their choices, and I had made mine. When the check came, I reached for it, but Nana was quicker. She snatched it up before I could even touch it. My treat, she said firmly, handing the waiter her card. You've paid enough. I smiled, my heart light. Thank you. As we walked out into the cool night air, arm in arm, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not just freedom, but a sense of pride. I wasn't alone anymore, and the future, it was mine for the taking. Bike. The world was wide open, and I was ready for it.